and I was like sleeping in the data center and also doing cabling myself. Estimates for how long it would take to complete that were 18 to 24 months. Well, we need to get that done in 6 months. Something that's going to be very important in the future is combining deep AI with robotics. Part of what I've been fighting, and maybe what has slowed me down somewhat, is that I don't want to make Terminator real.
Elon Musk built xAI into one of the fastest growing and highest performing AI companies in the world. But how did he do it when OpenAI, Anthropic, and others had such a big head start on him? In this video, we're going to discuss how xAI scaled faster than anyone thought was possible, plus what Elon's going to be building next and how it could change AI robotics and even the future of human labor. I'm Boardroom Wire. Let's jump into it.
To give an AI AI example, I guess, last year for xAI, when we were trying to build a training supercluster, we went to the various suppliers to ask. It said, this was beginning of last year, that we needed 100,000 H100s to be able to train coherently, and their estimates for how long it would take to complete that were 18 to 24 months. It's like, well, we need to get that done in 6 months. So then, or we won't be competitive.
So let's get a couple of definitions out of the way quickly first. So a supercluster is basically a massive purpose-built data center specifically for training large-scale AI models. So you combine tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of these GPUs, network them together, and these clusters are used to train the frontier models that you see like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc. The H100 is NVIDIA's flagship AI accelerator GPU. So it's basically a GPU designed specifically for these heavy duty machine learning workloads. And it's the most in-demand chip in the world. So that's why NVIDIA's stock has been going crazy, is everyone buying these to train models. Now, when Elon talks about deploying 100,000 of these, that's a massive investment. So the H100s go for between $25,000 and $40,000, depending on the chip and demand. And that's basically a $3 billion investment just in hardware. So no one's doing that except for the hyperscalers like Microsoft, Google, etc. So all the suppliers that Elon spoke to were quoting him basically 18 months or longer to deploy a supercluster like he's talking about here. But Elon knew that with the speed things were going, that wasn't going to be competitive, and he wanted to do it in 6, right? So he always goes just mega, always pushes timelines. So next we're going to jump into what he did to condense that timeline to 6 months and ultimately in-house this process.
So then, if you break that down, what are the things you need? Well, you need a building, you need power, you need cooling. We didn't have enough time to build a building from scratch, so we've had to find an existing building. So we found a factory that was no longer in use in Memphis that used to build Electrolux products. But then the input power was 15 megawatts, and we needed 150 megawatts. So we rented generators and had generators on one side of the building. And then we have to have cooling. So we rented about a quarter of the mobile cooling capacity of the US and put the chillers on the other side of the building.
So this gives us really good insight into how Elon thinks about solving these big problems. So he's a big proponent of first principles thinking, which is basically just a methodology for solving problems that strips everything down to its core fundamental elements. So people use this in physics, math, raw materials. But in the case of xAI and with these superclusters, he breaks it down into compute, power, and cooling as the 3 core pillars for the data center, and ultimately having a building to do it all. So obviously a lot of people would be intimidated by the challenge posed by putting together one of these superclusters themselves. But Elon says, all right, we don't have time to build a building. We'll buy a building, buy an old defunct factory. We need to add power, right? So we need to increase the power of the facility. We'll bring in generators. Well, if we have these generators, we'll bring in cooling systems. So he ultimately brought in mobile cooling, or like he says, a quarter of the US's cooling capacity to ultimately satisfy those requirements. And obviously he's got the H100s for the computing power. So ultimately, he took what is usually a multi-year process in planning out how to deploy one of these superclusters and did it in his 6-month time frame. So it's just again a hallmark of his approach, which is set these extremely big goals, accelerated timelines, and then use first principles thinking to ultimately achieve that.
But it was, and then we just ran the networking operation to do all the cabling, everything, in 4 shifts, 24/7, and I was like sleeping in the data center and also doing cabling myself. Um, and there were a lot of other issues to solve. You know, nobody had done a training run with 100,000 H100s training coherently last year. Maybe it's been done this year. I don't know, but and then we ended up doubling that to 200,000, and so now we've got 150,000 H100s, 50K H200s, and 30K GB200s in the Memphis training center, and we're about to bring 110,000 GB200s online at a second data center, also in the Memphis area.
So I think that this really ties together a bunch of the important elements that allowed xAI to scale so quickly and be competitive. And that's one, the level of commitment, right, to speed and scale. So Elon was sleeping in the data center to get this done, but he also knew this had to be done quickly. Otherwise, people were going to just run away and have too big of an advantage. And then two, you need to operate on a massive scale. So he's continuing to double down on the H100s, other GPUs for training to ensure that xAI and Grok continue to improve and get better and better, which is evidenced by Grok 4, right, and the latest release. So now Elon's going to share some perspective on what it takes to build a great foundation model. So let's hear that.
Well, there's other various elements that, um, beside competitiveness for large AI, um, there's for sure the talent of the people matter, um, the scale of the hardware matters, and how well you're able to bring that hardware to bear. So you can't just order a whole bunch of GPUs and they don't. Then you can't just plug them in. So you've got to get a lot of GPUs and have them um, train coherently and stably. Um, then it's like, what unique access to data do you have? I guess distribution matters to some degree as well. Like, how do people get exposed to your AI? Those are critical factors for if it's going to be like a large foundation model that's competitive.
So I like this framework because I think xAI has a lot of these. So Elon points out a few different pillars for building a strong foundation model. So the first is talent. You need to have good people running the models, training them. The H100s don't just work by themselves. And we all know Elon is a talent magnet, right? So he's scooped up people for all of his companies, but he's also pulling people from DeepMind, OpenAI, etc., to help build xAI. Next is the actual hardware. So obviously, based on what we heard earlier, they're making massive investments in that. The third is unique data. So the internet has tons of high quality public data, but most of that is already gone. So, xAI or x.com rather, and all of the data that they have on the platform formerly known as Twitter is a huge competitive advantage for xAI and likely contributes into this, again, rapid improvement and quality that they have in Grok. When you combine that with other proprietary data sets that Musk has across his businesses like Tesla and the perception data or the robotics data from the Optimus project, that moat gets even deeper. And lastly, and he puts kind of the least emphasis on this, but I think that this one's really important, is distribution. So by having X on millions of people's phones, they can just access that or deploy their AI to a ton of users. So this kind of mirrors the advantage that Google has or Alphabet with their AI products and being able to provide that right in your Chrome browser or Google search experience.
So yeah, um, something that's going to be very important in the future is um, combining deep AI in the data center or supercluster with robotics. So that things like the Optimus humanoid robot, and
Incredible.
yeah, Optimus is awesome. there's going to be so many humanoid robots and robots of all sizes and shapes. But my prediction is that there will be more humanoid robots by far than all other robots combined, by maybe an order of magnitude, like a big difference. Tesla does it. Tesla works closely with xAI. Um,
This AI plus robotics thread is a really interesting one because Elon's companies are positioned quite well here. So obviously they have the super intelligent xAI component baked out, but he's also been working on the Optimus robot project since 2021 under the Tesla umbrella. So Optimus is a series of humanoid robots that are designed to do tasks that humans do, and this has essentially been being trained with the same methodologies and techniques that they trained the Tesla autopilot feature on. Now, Musk is a big believer in humanoid robots because ultimately the world was designed for humans to interact. So if you want to replace our functions, what we're doing, you need the robots to be in humanoid form. And when you take a bigger step back and look at the super intelligence that he's building with xAI and Grok and the autopilot capabilities combined with Optimus, and again, that real world experience, he's perfectly positioned to combine the two and start to create that kind of iRobot scenario with actual humanoid robots that are helping you in your day-to-day tasks. So it's really interesting. And again, I think they're in a highly unique situation to make this happen, especially given the collaboration that happens between xAI and Tesla, which I think everyone kind of thinks is happening, but Elon really confirms it here. So while Elon's well positioned, he's also a little skeptical on this stuff historically. So let's wrap up and listen to a quick clip of him talking about that.
so, I mean, I guess part of what I've been fighting, and maybe what has slowed me down somewhat, is that I'm a little. I don't want to make Terminator real. you know. So I've been sort of, I guess, at least until recent years, dragging my feet on AI and humanoid robotics. And then I sort of come to the realization it's happening whether I do it or not. So you got really two choices. You could either be a spectator or a participant. And so well, I guess I'd rather be a participant than a spectator. So now it's, pedal to the metal on humanoid robots and digital superintelligence.
I think this part is really authentic from Elon because I do believe he's someone that is very skeptical and a little bit afraid of the potential of AI going awry. So obviously in clips today, he's been pretty measured and methodical about it, but you can go back to 2018 and like his Joe Rogan interview as an example where, he was talking about the potential fears of AI back then. I remember him giving the example of, well, if you asked AI to get rid of spam, one way to get rid of spam would be to get rid of people. So I think when he talks about building Terminator, building Skynet, that's something he actually struggles with and is not just a kind of marketing term. After all, his original investment in OpenAI was ultimately to help promote AI safety, but we would need a whole separate video to get into that topic. So you can see Elon has kind of, again, reached that point where he's accepted AI is going to happen. And I like the way he framed it too, where you can either be a participant and actually help to build this technology, or you can watch it happen. And I don't think Elon is ever going to be sitting on the latter part of that equation. He's always going to be a builder. And if this is going to happen, if it's inevitable, he's going to be part of the process. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button or comment. It helps out a ton. And if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. I'm Boardroom Wire. I do strategic breakdowns like this of topics and conversations in business and technology. See you on the next one.